And we are very excited to welcome to the airwaves, the interwaves, the creator, the writer, the director of Forbidden Broadway smash hit, Tony Award-winning Gerard, and I'm going to pronounce it wrong, Alessandrini.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
There you
It's
go.
actually easy to pronounce. It's just a very long name.
It's a beautiful name.
Or think of it as two names, Alice Andrini.
Oh, there you go.
Alessandrini. I love it. It's a great name. So welcome to the airwaves
Yes,
on
thank
this
you for
Sunday.
joining us.
Thank you, Gerard. This is my co-host, Danny.
Hi there.
Hello, Danny. Hi, so nice to join you today.
We're very, very happy. I'm a big Forbidden Broadway fan. I think a lot of us
thank you.
musical theater people are. So you started writing the show in 1982. Can we talk about how that happened? Like, did you just get like a spark? Like, how did you come up with all these wonderful, clever, witty ideas?
Well, I was a very young man outside of college, and basically I was writing these song parodies about the theater for fun, for my friends. And I'd been writing it since 1980, and I had a group of friends that were very talented, and I wanted us to put on a show, as they say in old-fashioned terms. And I thought it would be fun to use these parodies that I've written. So in 1981, we started doing Forbidden Broadway. We opened officially January 15th, 1982. That's why we say 1982. But anyway, the song parodies, which is really nothing new. I mean, I'm sure people have been doing it since the Greek times. But what's different about this is that I was using the songs from Broadway shows to parody songs from Broadway shows. So it was like, it had a sameness to it.
Now, can you tell our listeners what were some of the songs in your first volume?
Well,
Some of the shows.
Annie was one of the big shows on Broadway at that time. So, of course, Annie. And that had been running a while, over 5 years. So people loved it, but they were getting a little tired of it. And then Evita was a big show at that time. It had originally starred Patti LuPone. I think the cast had changed by then. The other big shows were Pirates of Penzance was a new hit, and that was the musical that starred Kevin Kline and Linda Ronstadt, and they had moved that to Broadway. And also, the big diva of the era was Lauren Bacall, who won her second Tony in Woman of the Year. So we spoofed that. It was an era where they were just starting to figure out that, revivals make money. Because for many years in the 60s and 50s and 70s, new shows, it was always about what are the new shows. And there were very few revivals on Broadway. But at that point, Rex Harrison was back in My Fair Lady. Richard Burton had done a revival of Camelot at Lincoln Center. So Yul Brynner was doing The King and I. So they were just starting to figure out that you could have big revivals every season. Of course, now we do them all the time.
Right.
I love how you mentioned Annie, because I saw an iteration of Forbidden Broadway, I think like over 10 years ago. And I do remember, Lion King was included in there, but I'll never forget the Annie parody. And I just remember Annie coming out and she's smoking a cigarette and she's like 30 years old.
Right.
And it's just, when I think of Forbidden Broadway, that's what I think of. I mean, it's just so
I know,
so funny and
it's been
fun.
associated with the show for a long time. And it's been, and when it wasn't on Broadway, it was still around touring, and of course it returned to Broadway many times. So it was sort of like our go-to number. And of course, as the show got older, we had our Annie get older. So that
I love that.
That is so funny. That is so funny. So, okay, so 1982, you have this smash hit. Did you expect it to take off the way it did?
No, I didn't. It was a wonderful surprise. It was quite the popular musical back then. We had a lot of celebrities come to see it, a lot of people that were in it. And so that was very thrilling. We used to come to work and see limos outside of the Triad Theater where we were doing the show. So that was very exciting. It was a wonderful surprise. People were laughing, so I guess it was really good in some areas, I mean, even back then at the beginning, we had the old famous Broadway stars like Ethel Merman and Mary Martin come to see it. So it was, I think it was a throwback to the revues from the 50s that were very popular in New York, and they hadn't been around in a while. So I think a lot of old New Yorkers love to go out and have a drink and see the show. It was very fun. It was very much like being at a party. And then, of course, with all the celebrities coming, if you were at a celebrity party. I mean, look, we had everybody come that was a star at the time, from Cher to Elizabeth Taylor to Prince Rainier to all the people that were spoofed in the show. So it was quite fun for a while.
Well, I love that you brought up, so you have all these celebrities coming. What was the response for the people that you're spoofing? Right. Like, did you get any kickback, or would people, I think, how did they feel about it being, because... Well,
to our faces, no, and I think in all honesty, they enjoyed it. I don't think I ever had anything that's been in Broadway that was meaner than what the critics were saying. So we're talking about stars and Broadway people that had been seasoned by a lot of criticism. And ours was more playful, and I think there is a loving layer to the show, and I think that still exists, So... I think that they enjoyed it, and I think that very often, being actors, they liked, being the center of attention and seeing themselves spoofed.
Well, if there's anything worse than being talked about, it's not being talked about at all.
Well,
so,
yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
Right?
That's right.
That is right.
Well, I was going to say too, what a great form of flattery too. I mean, like you've made it, you are now part of a parody in Forbidden Broadway. I think that's like. You've made it. You've made some kind of mark.
That's a good point. As a matter of fact, do you remember Carol Channing? She passed away earlier this year, but she was the original Dolly and Hello Dolly and Jumper for Lunch. Anyway, when she first came to the show, she wasn't included in it, and she asked to be included in it.
You go, Carol.
So we used to do it, and she loved coming to see herself spoofed. I think she was a bit of a publicity hound, so it was fun for her. And then at one point, we wrote a song for her to do on one of the albums, one of our cast albums. We have 13 cast albums, and the song was "Imitation is the Sincerest Form of Flattery." So,
well, that's it.
So she knew that,
Can you do a Carol Channing impersonation? Are you good at impressions, Gerard?
No pressure.
Well, Carol Channing's pretty easy for a man.
Yeah.
Good point.
Carol Channing.
How about Danny? How about you? Can you
do it?
Oh, I'm just so excited.
There you go.
That was good.
That was like, yeah.
So then you must have gotten on a roll. You have this show that opened, and then boom, Broadway shows are coming out, revivals. And are you just like, the idea's flowing, you're banging it out, you're more comfortable now writing these parodies because of the response? So boom, boom, boom. Les Mis comes out. What are some other, Julie Andrews, Patty LuPone, you have all these people on Broadway. Did the process start to get easier?
Yeah, well, as they come, I go to many of these shows, and I feel, this must be spoofed.
Right.
I mean, when I go to a show, though, I don't necessarily think, how am I going to parody this show? But I just enjoy the show or not enjoy the show, depending on what it is.
Exactly.
But later, I think, gee, that's very spoofable.
So out of all the parodies you've done, I mean, is there one that you're just like, that's my favorite. That's the one that
I have to say, we have a new set now. That's what we're doing at the Triad and on the East Side, too. We're doing all the new shows, but of the classic shows from the last 30 years or so, we got a lot of mileage out of Les Miserables. Oh. So, because it's a very serious musical, and it's, of course, revolution that takes place in France. So, it was very spoofable.
And so fun. I'm sorry. No,
well, I was just going to say, too, and what I love about Les Mis, too, is not only the subject matter, but also the technical elements they use, so that turntable. Folks love just having fun with that.
So funny. And you're at the Triad. Now, you're closing December 1st, correct?
Well, we're actually not. I'll tell you a secret. You can be the first here.
Ooh.
We're actually not closing completely. We're moving the show to the York Theater. The York Theater has been there for 50 years on the East Side, and it's a lovely theater, about 200 seats, and I've done other shows there. And so we're going to move it there. It'll be a limited engagement, but it'll be there for a while, and that starts, I think, January 14th.
That's great.
And it'll play through February, and that'll be nice because we'll have a little more backstage space and a little more onstage space.
I want to come. I want to come. I want to see it.
I mean, they're two different experiences because, at the Triad you have the drinks, and it's like you're, at a party, or you're out with friends at a dinner party. and there's that experience of it. And that can be very fun. But it's also a little tight and crowded. Mm-hmm. It's a little more of a cabaret experience. When we move it to New York, it'll be more of a theater experience. And Forbidden Broadway works well that way, too. So as a theater experience, and we have a little more space for a little more dancing and, costume changes, and so a lot more lighting. So it becomes something different. So if you're a real Forbidden Broadway fan, you should see them at both places.
Yeah, experience them both. So who can our fans... actually, before we go here, I want to play a little snippet of a song from Forbidden Broadway. I thought we had it set up. We're going to play a little bit. I think Patti LuPone, I just saw her last year live, and I think we're doing I Get a Kick Out of Me.
Yes, she did Anything Goes many years ago, yes. And she was tremendous in that show, probably the best Rena Sweeney ever. But she sang great. But sometimes her diction was, her voice has such depth to it that sometimes the beautiful sound of her voice would overwhelm her diction. So we spoofed that. I want to add that I love Patti LuPone, because you may think I may not by the time you hear this, but this was a very fun parody that we did when she did Anything Goes.
So we're going to play. Sometimes Facebook Live will shut us down, so we're gonna see how long they'll let us play the song. So here we go. I Get a Kick Out of Me.
In olden days this show was shocking, 'cause Merman would keep them rocking, but now they phone Patti LuPone. Good critics too, who used four-letter words, now have to search for better words. How she's grown, Patti LuPone. And so just like Eva Peron. Patti LuPone. Patti LuPone. Patti LuPone. My story is much too sad to be told. I've played nearly everything, and I'm not very old. The only exception I know is the case when I'm acting for bourgeoisie, fighting vainly the old ennui, and I suddenly turn and see my fabulous face. I get no kick in a show. A Broadway song doesn't thrill me for long. Evita was no happy spree, but I get a kick out of me. Some snort cocaine when they're low. I need no sniff, 'cause I think, what's the diff? I'm already terrific to see, and I get a kick out of me. I get a kick when I snarl and sneer and people cheer out for me. I get a kick though my voice is shrill, 'cause Frank Rich will still adore me. I got no kick in Les Mis, dying for art in the part of a tart, broke my heart at the smart RSC. But I get a kick out of me. I get a kick when I fire my machine gun like vibrato. I get a kick when the lyrics crushed into my rushed obligato. I get no kick on a stage, flashing some guy with my stubby cape eyes, and why I am in this debris. It's
was great.
You know what I love about that is you're hearing it, and I'm just picturing Patty.
I know.
Just picturing all those facial expressions and just
who was in the original production of Les Mis, by the way, which we all know, obviously,
Right.
because we're all
She
theater
was, yeah,
people,
that's what the
right?
reference was.
So
yeah, she didn't do it here, but she did it in London. Yeah.
I just saw her live. I think I was at the State Theater, and I was with my friend, and I'm like, "Don't take any pictures. Don't take out your phone. Just sit there and watch the show." I'm like, 'cause I don't want her calling us out.
Right.
So can you tell us what are some of the newer shows that our audiences could expect to see at the Triad or at the York Theater?
Well, Forbidden Broadway being always topical, I have what's going on Broadway now, which is very different than what was going on when Pat Adapone did Anything Goes. By the way, that was Tony DeBono singing that.
Ooh.
She was a wonderful instrument. She even won a Drama Desk Award for Forbidden Broadway.
Oh,
that's wonderful.
Tony DeBono was wonderful. But anyway, today, Broadway is very different. So we spoof Evan Hansen, we spoof Beetlejuice, Moulin Rouge, we spoof Tootsie. Of course, there's a little bit on Hamilton, which I'll tell you more about later. We spoof some of the new stars like Billy Porter, who did Kinky Boots and was at the Tonys last year, creating a stir. And we also spoof the revivals. Of course, there's revivals now. So there's Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish.
Oh, nice.
And there's a new Oklahoma that's rather dark, shall we say, which was fun to spoof. So what else do we have? Oh, and the Prom, that's gone now, but we worked that into the show. And even the Ferryman, we do some drama. We have like a little spoof of some dramas of the Ferryman, a little bit of To Kill a Mockingbird. So this was plenty to do this year. And it's all new, so no Les Mis, no Annie, unfortunately, in this production.
Right.
But the audiences seem to be rollicking with laughter, so I think it's working.
You're fast,
and it's great
though.
that Broadway still goes on,
Yeah, and you're fast. I mean, you just mentioned Beetlejuice and all. So as soon as the show opens, are you like, all right, I'm going to go see it? How are you spoofing it?
I don't think how am I going to spoof it, but as soon as the show opens, I do want to see it. I'm curious to see what it is.
Right.
So I do see them early on, and I try to see them, and sometimes my friends will get me a press seat. Nobody gives me press seats for these shows, so I have to depend on the kindness of strangers. But I do see them early on, sometimes before they open, because I have, an incredible curiosity about what's going on Broadway, and I want to see the show and then read the reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's get right to it,
So talk a little bit about the production elements too, because not only are you spoofing the songs, but we were just looking at a photo that had Beetlejuice and Dear Evan Hansen, and just looking at a photo, we started chuckling because we're already thinking of what the spoof essentially is. So talk a little bit about in addition to the music, what you're doing in terms of costumes and the staging as well.
Well, we have wonderful costumes by Dustin Cross, and the costumes are always fun to spoof because, of course, it's a Broadway show, so everything's going to be heightened anyway, so we heighten it a little bit more for effect. Hairstyles and wigs are always fun to spoof because you identify stars by their haircuts. So wigs can always be a very, wonderful way to spoof a show and make people laugh with quick identification. And then, of course, Jerry McIntyre does that choreography. He's great. And he's, you can send him to a show and he'll come back and he'll spoof the choreography. So we have that department working overtime, too. And that can be very fun to see. You don't usually see that in a lot of spoofs, somebody spoofing the actual choreography.
So...
I was just going to say, I love, too, how you mentioned, Kinky Boots with Billy Porter and what he did at the Tonys. I noticed that you have Frozen, Let It Blow.
Right.
Frozen, of course, we have to do the Disney shows, yes.
Yeah,
right,
and it opens with, Adele Kazim. I love how you're using, you mentioned being topical,
pop culture stuff.
But using some pop culture stuff that might not happen in the show, but these are still Broadway stars that are essentially what's going around them as well. So
Exactly.
Do you want to give a shout? So who's in the cast now? Or actually, do you want to because your casts have rotated or changed, just like we do, right, over the years?
Oh yeah, well, from audition to audition, we changed the cast, and we have a tremendous cast right now. As a matter of fact, one of the best ever, and that includes Jenny Lee Stern, who actually she was in the Alive and Kicking edition a few years ago. And we have Aline, and we have Manny Houston, and we have Joshua Turchin, who's a young man, because the show is called The Next Generation. So we actually have included The Next Generation in it. And so he's great. He's just turned 13, and he does all the youngster things like Evan Hansen and Harry Potter, things like that.
Ooh, Harry's in
and then we have Chris Collins Pisano. He's great. He's very versatile, great guy. He does Beetlejuice, and he does Oklahoma, and he does Fiddler. He can play anything from an old Jewish Tevye to a monster.
That's so. Gerard, what about you? What did you do your high school musicals? Were you involved in your local theater programs? How did you kind of get tapped into this?
Oh, yes, that's very astute of you to mention that. Yes, when I was young, I did.
Yeah.
I started out doing high school musicals. Back then, we did things like Oklahoma and Camelot. And then I did community theater musicals when I was a young man, before 20. Then I went to college to study singing and music at the Boston Conservatory of Music, which still turns out very talented people. We've hired a lot of people from them. And I was educated in Boston at the Boston Conservatory. And then they had a great theater department there, music, dance, and theater department. So a lot of the people that got through the course, it was a tough course for, 4 or 5 years. You were very well trained by the time you finished. A lot of them went to New York to seek work in theater and thereabouts. And I think almost everybody that I went to college with has been on Broadway or movies. They've all had very successful careers. So I guess we got some good training.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're in a good circle,
when I came to New York, it was, I did a lot of stock and amateur things at first. There was a light opera of Manhattan that I worked at called Loom. And, I would do what I could around town. But within 5 years, I sort of hit it big, if you can call it, with Forbidden Broadway.
Yeah.
So that wasn't such a long time, to get into Time magazine.
No,
that's incredible.
Actually, it's pretty great.
So you had mentioned,
but I loved when I was a young man. I loved doing stock and amateur productions, and I did all. I had a nice singing voice, and I was I guess an okay-looking guy. So I do all the big baritone male leads like Billy Bigelow and Carousel, Kismet, Alfred. I was kind of like a young Alfred Drake. So that was fun, and I'm glad that I've crossed over to the professional theater now.
Yeah, well, you got great training, right, in community theater, stock, college.
And I've left a lot of the performing elements behind because I seem to have a unique knack as a writer, so that's where I'm most wanted,
Isn't it funny how you think you're going to start off one way and then you land somewhere else, but it's truly totally satisfying.
That's the way it goes. Yeah, it's funny that it goes that way. I mean, that's why when you're studying theater, you kind of have to be ready to do anything.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So you had mentioned Hamilton before, and you created Spamilton.
Right. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that.
I didn't spoof Hamilton too much in this new edition of Forbidden Broadway because I just finished doing a whole spoof of Spamilton. I had been doing Forbidden Broadway for many years in New York, for like over 30 years, spoofing all the shows like Phantom of the Opera, and we mentioned Annie and everything in between. And then Hamilton came along, and it was the biggest hit show that had arrived in New York since I had been in New York. And I felt compelled to do it because I thought, oh my God, I've spent most of my life spoofing Broadway shows. I have to spoof the biggest one since I've been here. Yeah, and I was very grateful for it because it's a very progressive show, and it dispelled a lot of the sameness that was going on Broadway. So many new Broadway musicals were predictable, but Hamilton wasn't predictable, and it had a tremendous palette of music and sound and lyrics. Lin-Manuel did a wonderful job of that. And it was a great new way to tell the story. They told the story very briskly, so it was never ahead of you.
Yeah.
You were never ahead of the story, and it was compelling. And, of course, it was staged wonderfully by Tom McHale. So it was such a great event. I thought, I've got to do this. And of course, it's a serious musical about the American Revolution. I thought, well, I mean, you got to spoof something like that, So, something that's about history is really spoofable. So I came up with Spamilton. Not particularly an original title, but at that point there was so much on the internet and around the world about Hamilton that it was all spam. Hamilton spam. So I thought Spamilton. So I spoofed that show by actually not spoofing their story, but by spoofing Lin-Manuel's story, or a story that I thought was Lin-Manuel. I don't really know him that well. And so that was fun to do. And we did a whole show of that, and it was very successful. We're still doing it around the country, So I think it's playing now in Kansas City. We did it in Chicago, Boston, Los Angeles. We took it to London. So that's why I wasn't doing Forbidden Broadway for 5 years, because I was spoofing Hamilton with the show Spamilton, and I really enjoyed it. And it was different. It was a different type of show to spoof because a lot of the lyrics are rap. So I sort of had to learn to write rap, which is very different than spoofing Cole Porter.
Yeah.
So, but once I got into it, it was very fun because, there was more space for comment. And so now that show is played around the country, and we're taking a little break from it probably, or at least I'm taking a break from it, even though the show's still running, I thought, time to get back to Forbidden Broadway. And I thought, well, there have been a lot of new Broadway shows since the last Forbidden Broadway, so I thought, time to do this. So that's how I came about doing this new show. But of course, I couldn't really leave Spamilton out completely,
right?
Because Hamilton is very much still a part of the, makeup of Broadway.
Oh, the culture,
so I did a spoof of Lin-Manuel and Billy Porter.
Oh, that's so fun.
I got to say, though, I remember when I was looking for Hamilton tickets and you just couldn't get them.
I was going to say
Spamilton always kept coming up, and even, or if you were looking up anything for Hamilton, I would always see advertisements for it. So I was like, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Because if maybe you've just seen the show and now you have something else that you can go check out, or you haven't seen it but you love the music, well, now go see the parody of it. So I think
that's true. Yeah, so many people knew the show from the cast album, whether they'd seen it or not. Oh, Lin-Manuel came to see Spamilton, and he seemed to enjoy it very much. He tweeted that he laughed his brains out, and then he gave the young cast, we had a wonderful young cast in that production, tickets to see Hamilton.
Oh my gosh.
He arranged them to have free tickets. Which was, an extremely expensive gift.
Yes.
So, and, these young people, some of them were 21, 22, and that's what I love about theater and what about I do. We include the young people. And it was just a generous and wonderful gift of him and his company to do.
I could see him loving the show. He seems to have he's one of those people that loves giving, has a sense of humor. He's just kind of...
He does, yeah.
Right? So you got to meet him. So have you ever been starstruck by anyone that's come to your show?
All the time.
Yeah?
Oh, they still all starstruck me, yeah.
Yeah?
I mean, everybody from Lin-Manuel to Julie Andrews, so they all just... when you admire something that somebody does, and how can you not be starstruck? And, I never think of myself as on their level. They're doing film, TV, Broadway. So it's wonderful to meet these celebrities, and they're still coming to the show. We still, once in a while we still get to meet and hobnob with them. And a lot of the writers that we spoof come to the show, and that's fun to meet them too.
You know what I love?
I appreciate that because I admire the writers.
Of course, as a writer yourself. But you know what I love about Forbidden Broadway? There's so much content out there, and they deal with heavy subject matter. I mean, that's theater's meant to start a dialogue, a conversation, make you uncomfortable. Right. But what I love about Forbidden Broadway is sometimes you just want to laugh, right? You just want to sit in a theater and just laugh and enjoy, appreciate the talent that's up there, because it's a lot of talent, and just sit there and laugh and have that feel-good feeling. So you are bringing a lot of joy, not only to your actors, but to the audiences as well.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. I love the idea that I might bring joy to people because, I've loved it when comedies or musicals bring joy to my life. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate that, and I hope that is true.
And and I think too, what I love about Forbidden Broadway, you don't have to see it. You don't have to know all those shows to enjoy it. It's not this inside joke for musical theater fans, right? I mean, of course, if you know the show, you're going to laugh a little bit harder. But I mean, when I saw it, it was like, I want to say like 10, 15 years ago, there was a couple shows that I hadn't seen, but just what you've created, I still found funny and I could still relate. So I think that's...
Oh, that's good to know. Important. I believe that is true. First of all, I try to write the show on different levels so that you can enjoy it if you're a real theater insider, and you can enjoy it if you know nothing about theater. Because Forbidden Broadway is really spoofing the hype of theater. If you kind of know that a show is around, or you've seen a poster on a bus, or you've heard somebody humming a song, sometimes that's enough. And I try to make the numbers self-explanatory. I used to call them mother-proofing because my mother, she wouldn't go to all the new Broadway shows. Matter of fact, maybe hardly any of them. And she kind of knew they were around, But if I could make it explanatory enough that my mother liked it and understood it on some level, then I know I've done my job. So I think that's still true. The show is kind of mother-proof. Now, if you are a critic for the New York Times, you may get a few more jokes that the general public, but it really is a show for the general public. I also try to not make it vulgar or put any four-letter words into it. It's actually very easy to get a laugh with a four-letter word, and I prefer the challenge of not doing that. So what we're doing is it's kind of making a family-friendly show. Sometimes a young person who doesn't understand anything about Broadway enjoys it a lot just for its colorful costumes and the music and the singing and the spoof dancing.
I love that you said because to me, theater should be accessible for everyone. It's such an art form that's been around for, oh my gosh, millions of years. I mean, since ancient Greece, thousands of years, ancient Rome, thousands of years. My tech guy's looking at me. Thousands of years. But I love that it's not vulgar. And listen, I can swear, I have a mouth on me, but you know what? When I go to the theater or a movie, if there's too much cursing, I'm like, you couldn't think of another word to say. Like, you just had to throw in an F-bomb. I appreciate that.
Right. Well, that's what it's cursing is fine, and I do it myself. But it's if you're being in the theater, you expect a little more creativity from people, and it's fun to be creative with getting a laugh and not using that. Like I said, it's very easy to get a laugh with a four-letter word, But as a writer, it's a little more challenging and colorful to do it in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next? Do you have any projects you could talk about, or what's going to happen?
I had a busy year. I'm about to open another show at the York Theater before we do Forbidden Broadway there, and it's a review of Maury Yeston's music. Maury Yeston wrote the fabulously successful Broadway shows Nine, Titanic, Grand Hotel. He has a Phantom of the Opera. His Phantom, they call it.
Yes, I know that one.
Isn't the same? It's not the same as the one on Broadway, but it's equally as good, and it tours all around the world. And he does some classical style writing too, because he's a great musicologist. Anyway, so I've put together a review of the music from his career. He's still very much with us, so he was part of assembling this. And it's all different songs from Titanic and Nine and Grand Hotel, and some songs from musicals that were never produced, and a couple of new songs that he wrote for the production. And it's a review. It's a little different style review than Forbidden Broadway. It's not heavy on the spoof costumes and wigs and like that. It's more focused on the actual music and lyrics. But anyway, we start previews in that this coming Tuesday at the York Theater, and that opens December 5th for a run. And we may move it afterwards once we get that going. So that's what I've been doing. I've been keeping busy.
I love Grand Hotel. Yeah. I want to be that girl.
I love Grand Hotel too.
I love Titanic.
Yeah, I never saw Titanic. I'm so disappointed in myself.
I just love that music.
Grand Hotel, though.
Oh yeah, well that won the Tony for Best Musical, but it only ran a few years. But I believe they're working on bringing it back because, of course, that story is timeless.
Oh yeah. I mean, even with the movie. I mean, the movie, which is not. The musical people is not like the movie. Very different stories, but I mean, same. But there's
they both end the same way.
There you go.
Spoiler alert: the ship does sink. In fact, that's fantastic. So you have so much going on. So you have Forbidden Broadway moving to the York Theater from the Triad, so you could see it, ladies and gentlemen. at the Triad until December 1st, and then January.
At the York Theater from January 14th to February 17th. And then in between then, if you want to do something, come and see the Maury Essen Show. It's called Anything Can Happen in the Theater. And that'll be also at the York Theater from, November 26th through, I think, December 28th. And if it does well, we might extend a little bit.
So
exciting. And then you have Spamiltons around the country.
Going around the country.
Spamilton's on tour, yeah. I've been a busy guy, all off-Broadway stuff, but it's all great stuff. All with they all have young, extremely talented, attractive people in them, which is always a plus, you know.
Gerard, some of my favorite stuff is off-Broadway. Yeah. I've seen such fantastic off-Broadway theater that has just left me with my mouth open. You know, what these people leave on the stage, the content,
I agree.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you know, off-Broadway now, it's still a place where they're trying to do theater, you know, real theater. On Broadway, there's a lot of great theater, but a lot of it isn't theater. It's just large entertainment.
Yes.
You know, something, you know, almost like going to the circus, which is fine. You know, I have no problem with that. But a lot of what you see on Broadway is that. It's not actually real experimental or dramatic theater. So you tend to find that more easily off-Broadway.
Yeah, and the intimacy of the space. You know, I think that's what I love is just you're in this smaller room and you're just more connected to what's going on stage.
Right. You are. And you can do things. It's all about the actor and the word because you don't have the big sets and everything. Charles Bush is a good friend of mine. He's got a new show coming up. That's real. You know, those shows are so funny, and you would never see anything like it on Broadway.
Right.
You know, but they're so clever and funny. So I always enjoy his work too, and I love working off Broadway because you know there's a corporate entity telling me what to do.
Exactly.
I can just do what. And I think that's true for everybody, you know.
Well, we do regional theater, which is obviously, you know, it's Broadway, off-Broadway, regional theater. Yeah, same thing. I love new works. I love kind of being a part of something that's just kind of like springboarding, you know, into the scene. I like grit. I like getting your hands dirty, being in it. So, you know what I mean? And even Forbidden Broadway has a grit, even though it's funny and spoofy, there is a grit to Forbidden Broadway, a beautiful grit. Maybe a sparkly grit.
Right.
Glittery
well, somebody
grit.
told me it's theater of danger too, because you never know if we're going too far, and we're doing things so quickly. In other words, everything is so topical, like we talked about earlier. We get Beetlejuice and Moulin Rouge Red and Show.
Right.
That it's theater on the edge. You know, you never know what's going to work, what's not going to work. So I thought when my friend said that it's theater of danger, I thought, oh yeah, that it is that.
Gerard, do you go to a lot of the performances or like?
Oh yeah. I mean, well, like I said, you know, we have a history of a lot of Broadway celebrities coming to them, so I love to go and see who's going to be there. And you know, usually there's somebody that, if they're not Broadway stars, they're like some of the big producers, writers of Broadway. So it's fun to hobnob with them.
Absolutely. I mean, and listen, this is the business of show. You're in it, we're in it. It's making a connection. I mean, come on, guy. I mean, we all admit it. Going to things, meeting people, sharing your talents, because that's the only way this art form is going to stay around is if we kind of help each other, sharing, working together. You know, I don't believe in competition. I mean, healthy competition, but there's room for us all. There's room for us all down here.
That's right. There is. And that's what's beautiful about theater when there's all different types of theater around.
But as far as Forbidden Broadway, there's been nothing like it. I mean, as not to the caliber of what you are creating. I've never seen anything like it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for saying that. Thanks. So we try hard. I try to keep it a little different and fresh. Certainly fresh, you know, fresh in both, you know, meanings of the word.
Fresh and fresh. So, that's why we love it.
Fresh, topical. I mean, current.
And.
You know, having seen Beetlejuice, I'm just curious. I mean, can you share just what the spoof is on Beetlejuice? Because I'm just...
Well, Chris Collins-Sadana, who's a very good actor, does the spoof, and he spoofs... do you remember in Beetlejuice there's a song, the opening song is a show about death?
Yes.
So I've changed the lyrics, so we're talking about is, Beetlejuice, the death of Broadway. And then we have Chris Collins does a wonderful impression with the
of Alex Brightman
lyrics that we have. It's short but sweet.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's what I like. Although I was going to play the Les, because I will say Les Mis is still one of my favorites, and I've worked on Les Mis, so. Actually, I worked on the high school version of Les Mis, which is basically it's just an hour shorter. That's it. It's still pretty long, but
we have a new cast album coming out in a few weeks of the new show.
Yeah.
But you're most welcome to play anything from one of our other 11 or 12 cast albums. Our next one will be the 13th.
Gerard, let our listeners know, where can they find you? Where can they find where can they get information about what you're doing? The records, where can they buy the records? Where can they get tickets?
Yeah, well, I'm not a ticket agent. Well, we have a Forbidden Broadway site. I think if you just Google Forbidden Broadway, it all comes up.
Okay.
Ticket sales, and the records you can get either online. You can buy them online, or you can get them at Barnes & Noble has them. I know Barnes & Noble has an exclusive with us too. They actually talk about records, they actually make the vinyl record.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Vinyl's in, baby.
Yeah, they make those too now. The era has changed back.
Do you know, as far as vinyl, this is I'm digressing, that you can actually, when you pass away, I don't know if this is true or not, you can get yourself made into a vinyl record? Your ashes.
What a horrible thought.
I know.
But what plays?
I don't know. Maybe you pick the song.
It's a you kind of screaming.
You mean I can become the cast album of South Pacific if I want?
Yes, you could be like Gerard. Yes. Isn't that crazy? But I do love listening. I'm a vinyl person, and I love, on a day like today, being home, and I love when the needle hits the record. That's my favorite sound.
Yeah, I love vinyl too. Yeah, I mean it's really not very. It sounds a little different from CDs. It's not as convenient. It's not as convenient as downloading music, but it's got such a warm, wonderful sound,
yes,
and I love it. Now that you have a choice, it's fun to have the choice to get up and take the record off the turntable and turn it over.
Yeah,
I love the album covers. Matter of fact, I have a lot of records myself, and through the years, I always ran home and got my albums when some star came to the show. So I have all my shows signed by, Shirley Jones and Julie Andrews and Yul Brynner and Lin-Manuel, even up to Lin-Manuel. So,
that's fantastic.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, it's really fun, and I keep them and I love them.
So we here on the show, we love to just talk about, what we do for self-care or, so when you're not working and you're not creating, what do you do for fun? What do you do to kind of just de-stress?
Well, we were just talking about it. I'm a big vinyl hunter. I love to go hunt for vinyl records. There's still some source to do that. I have a little interest in art design, so I do a little, not painting, but the drawing and stuff like that. I have a big interest in film, the actual film, and I like to, it's fun because I don't work in film, so it's fun to see a new film and think about it, or I don't have to write about it or do anything about it, but I love seeing the new films. I love seeing classic films on TCM. So that's what I do.
I love Turner Classic. Mm-hmm. So when you're writing, Gerard, do you write by yourself? Do you get a team together, bang out ideas? Did you start out that way and then you kind of went on your own? Is it really just non-specific? You might just get an idea in your head, pull over, write it down until you get somewhere where you can get your thoughts down on paper or the computer, whatever you do. But what do you do for when you're what is your process like? Your work?
Well, I do write alone, and mostly alone. I mean, it's certainly in the beginning when I'm certainly starting to put things on paper. I like to go to Lincoln Center Library. I live near there. Maybe do a little research. It's quiet there. Nobody's going to disturb me. I'm not going to get a phone call. So I like to do it at Lincoln Center Library. I try to, when I'm doing that, I try to put so many hours in the day, have some discipline to do that. Mm-hmm. I do get ideas when I'm walking around or vacuuming even, and I'll store them in my memory or I'll stop and write them down. I do write some original songs. Usually they're for fun, and but I do that. And like I said, if I have an idea in the middle of the night, I'll get up and write it down. What else do I do? Usually I write a script first, write it out, Forbidden Broadway, like more numbers than we need. Then I'll take it into the actors when we start the rehearsal process. And usually a lot of it is rewritten.
Right.
Because I can hear right away what's working and what's not. At that point, I may take suggestions from the actor, like not suggestions of lines so much, but suggestions like, "Oh, why don't we do a Tootsie number, or or why don't you do more of this Fosse Verdon number?" So things like that. We like this one. I could do more of that. I'm a really good mimic doing so and so. Bernadette Peters, can you write me a Bernadette Peters number? So there's that interaction with the writing process. I may be still writing it in rehearsal. And then there's the next level, which is you put it in front of an audience, and you don't know what's really funny until you get in front of a room of people, just strangers, and they tell you, this works, this doesn't work. And then you go back and cut and rewrite, and say, well, this didn't work, so we're taking it out. And sometimes it's laborious. Sometimes you may try something for a couple of weeks in different places. Is it going to work this way? Is it going to work that way? Is it going to work with another couple of funny lines? Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't work. So in that case, maybe out the number goes. And then maybe in a new number goes. Like, you could tell the audience really liked the spoof of Frozen, so they want more of that. Right. So, so it's a development process. But I start by writing alone and, just weeding it out later.
I call that triaging. When you
okay.
Yeah,
That's a good word for it.
Yeah, triaging, right? Like you have an idea and then you kind of figuring it out on the go, and it's free writing. You write down your thing, and then as time goes on, like you said, you talk to your actors or whoever, and sometimes. I bet you some of your favorite things, do they like in film, do they end up on the cutting room floor?
For sure. Things, Well, although actually, if maybe it started out as my favorite thing, but if I put it in front of an audience and the audience is silent, well, then it's no longer one of my favorite things.
Right. You're dead to me. Well, forget that ever happened.
Do you ever add, if you mentioned how you're developing it, and you might add more of a specific parody, but like let's say something just happens, with an actor. Do you ever go in and go, hey, we can add a little bit in there?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. It and that happens all the time. They may win an Emmy or something, or I know we added some lines about that in our Billy Porter number, or they may get blacklisted or something like that, Mm-hmm. But yeah, absolutely, it's topical theater. It has to reflect what's going on. So, and it's we're like I said, we're working off Broadway, and as you know, in a smaller framework, so you can do that stuff.
Yeah, you
can bring something to the actor and say, let's put this in a few days, and usually they're game. And like I said, it being theater of danger, usually the actors that are doing it are willing to do something dangerous, which may include doing something very topical.
I want to be a Forbidden Broadway.
I got to get there. And for an audience, how exciting that they're seeing something that they can see one day, and they can go back later and see a completely different show.
Yeah.
We always talk about as performers, every show is different because of the audience.
Right.
Well, in this case, it's depending on when they're going, they could be getting something new. I think that makes it really fun.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point, yes.
So before we go, is there anything that you want to share with us that we maybe didn't touch upon today that you want our listeners to know?
Let's see. Well, I may be repeating myself, but we have a tremendously talented young cast. Besides maybe having a talent for writing parodies, I think it's been said I have a talent for finding new young talent and developing them. So we have some wonderful young, relatively young to me anyways, in their 20s or younger in the cast. And also in the Moriarty Review, Anything Can Happen in Theater has a tremendously young, talented cast. So sometimes, even regardless of the material, it's just wonderful to see these people dancing, and it's beautiful to hear them singing with these young, undamaged voices.
Yes.
So I recommend that about the show. It's a great place to see budding talent.
Yeah, continuously
and I'd like
legacy.
to pay tribute to them all. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but continuing this legacy, that they're carrying the torch, these young performers. And as much as they learn from us, we learn from them too,
That's true. That's true. We do learn from them too.
So
when you do theater, do you perform or do you direct or produce or write?
Well, Danny, you go first.
Both. All of the above.
Yeah, we do all the above. Yeah,
we teach as well too. Yeah. So I perform, I direct. We're both teaching artists as well.
Great.
So we work on new plays as well, which is really exciting.
Great.
I just love hearing.
That's important to get new material out there.
Absolutely.
And give people a chance. Do you ever write new plays?
You know what? In college, I did, and it was always because I had to.
Yeah,
I was taking a class, and I had to, write a new play or something, and and it was always something that I was kind of like, I'm not a playwright, and then you take this class, and you're like, that worked out well.
We're like, I am a playwright. Yeah, I do the same thing as Dan.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We're both teaching artists, so we both teach younger, much younger than us generation, act, direct, and I'm just starting to dabble into film, so I do film acting more than I do theater. I do theater. Danny and I do new works together, which is fun, which we really love doing. So we kind of, like you said, you kind of got to learn how to do it all in this business, right? You can't just be like, I'm just going to be an actor. That's it. You can.
That's
there are people that do that, but eventually.
Yeah, the other night they were short an usher at Forbidden Broadway, and I ushered everybody to their seats, and I did it very well. And I thought, here's something in theater I hadn't done yet, and even that I do well. So.
And you can't say that anymore. Now you can say you ushered an off-Broadway show. That's it.
Right.
You're going to go get that front of house gig.
Right.
There you go. And you know what? I've been to Broadway where some of my favorite. I've had such great ushers. Never. I always tell my students, never put down anyone in theater. There's so many people when you open that program that make it spin. Whether it's the usher, the person taking your tickets, everyone has a part in this.
That's when the experience starts. Once you walk in that door.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Theater is really a collaborative art.
Yes.
Nobody does it alone. Even if it's one person show, you're not doing it alone.
Absolutely.
So it's really so many people.
I want to come see the show, but I want to make sure you're there. I really want to go. I want to see. I've listened to all the records. I have the CDs. I want to see it live. Can you believe I've never seen it live? I'm ashamed of myself.
Oh, you have to see it live. It's so much fun. Yeah. Well, let's see. Well, this week it's the last week of the Triad, but I'm at the Moriarty show.
Right.
I don't know. I'll be there this week.
So maybe I'll wait until New York.
When we move to New York, which is a lovely theater, a great place to see it. I'll be pretty much be there, especially the first week, especially if you think January, 14th through January 20th. I'll be there getting it set up and everything.
Can I reach out to you?
And I will be at the Triad probably next weekend during the shows.
I'm thinking New York might be better. Can I reach out to you and say, hey, we're coming? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Because I got to get a picture. I'm a big social media person. Are you a social media person?
No, not because I dislike it, or I just don't. Usually, if I'm sitting at a computer on my phone, I'm writing something. I'm not, doing social media. But I admire it, and I love that other people do it.
Well, I admire that you're not.
Me too. I admire that you're like, I'm not on it. I'm
because for us, it's hard to, we actually, it's part of our jobs too.
We do that too. We're social media people.
It's tough to
break away
from it.
And you know what's, and actually, it's a testament to you how successful you are, and you don't even need social media. Me and my other friends talk about this all the time. Do you need social media to be a success? So many people never had it. And look at you.
Well, that's a different story, though. I have, people that work for us that do social media.
Right.
And some of the actors do social media on the show. And so there are other people doing it. And because I've been doing Forbidden Broadway a long time, it sort of already existed in an antique form of social media. So there was a lot of press and everything like that. So when I say that I don't do social media, it doesn't mean that I don't use it, just means that I'm not handling it per se myself.
Personally. Yeah. Yourself. But that's great. So to our listeners, Forbidden Broadway at the Triad till December 1st. Moriarty, please, I'm going to say the name wrong. Gerard, help me.
And Moriarty, Gerard Alessandrini, anything in the theater at the York from November 26th to December 28th.
And
then Forbidden Broadway goes to the York Theater from January 13th through February 17th.
So
Great.
exciting. So much going for you. Spamilton, all across the country.
Yes, Hamilton and Kansas City for a month, so we're out there.
Good.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. And we're so grateful that you were able to join us today on a Sunday, rainy Sunday here, to talk about your show. But thank you so much. Thank you for, bringing us laughs since 1982, letting us laugh at ourselves.
Right.
Sometimes as actors take ourselves too seriously, don't we, Danny? And it's nice to be able to, you got to be able to laugh at yourself. And I think
you have to be able to laugh. You have to be able to laugh at everything, and you don't sound like you take yourself too seriously.
Exactly. Oh, this was so much fun.
This was really special. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gerard.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you at the York Theater.
Have a rainy day.
All right.
Call me in either place. I'll come and say hello, okay?
I will. I'm definitely going to reach out.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
That was so much fun.
That was really fun. Yeah.
You know what? The lame is, I just remember it was like, at the end of the show, you're another year older.
Well, and for me, it's the Annie. I just remember, she's smoking a cigarette. She has the red dress and
but she's like,
the wig. And she's like, I'm still waiting or something, waiting for tomorrow. And I just think that, right before we went on the air, we looked at that photo and I even said to you, I was like, who's that? And you're like, I think that's Hadestown. And I just started laughing.
Yeah, because I think it was, right? It looked like Hadestown.
Yeah, it looks like Andre DeShield's character.
So, I'm always fascinated. I feel this way. Forbidden Broadway, even like South Park, how fast they can get out these topical conversations or these topical stories. I mean, to get out Tootsie, Beetlejuice,
well, I mean,
Moulin Rouge just opened.
Right. I just love how he talked about how it's such a, we were talking about new plays, how it's such a development process that they're constantly changing it and adding to it. I mean, that makes it exciting for me as an audience member, and I'm sure for those actors too.
Oh, yeah.
To be able to, it's fresh. It keeps it fresh.
And, I'm always impressed with impersonations because I don't have that ear to impersonate. I mean, not well. I mean, I can maybe try Carol Channing, but I'm really not that good.
And good for Gerard for throwing it back at us when he was like, what about you, Danny? I was like, oh my God.
I was like, who's interviewing who? But I love that about Gerard. Gerard, you are fantastic.
That was really fun. Really fun.
Oh, great conversation on a Sunday. We were both like mood today, not because of the interview.
Because of the weather.
It started raining last night and I was like, oh, rain.
But I'm excited we got in here because we're not here on Thursday because it's Thanksgiving.
Gobble, gobble, turkey day, gobble, gobble. So we won't be here, but we'll be back December 8th. We have...
December, oh man.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Yep.
Girl, my friend Laura McCann, she just produced her movie Girl Boxer. We're going to be doing a conference call. David Sittler, Laura McCann, and I'm saying and there is another person, I feel like a jerk that I don't remember it right now, but that'll be fun. Independent film.
It's our first conference call.
I know. And we've had them before. I've done them terribly. You just don't remember because I've been like, oh my God, more than one person on the phone.
Well, we're lucky we had Todd in the studio with us today.
Thanks, Todd.
There he goes. Pop in there. There he goes.
You go. So, and then we have some exciting things that I can't really talk about yet because they're in the fire. Some big, exciting interviews coming up. And I guess that's that. So
that's that. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for
Bye, guys.
Crackle popping it up with us. Peace out.